Well, I guess I am old because I remember back in the day when the iOS App Store was basically the one-stop shop for all things games on the iOS platform. You know, back when the iPod Touch was big and they had, big games like Cut the Rope, Angry Birds, Fruit Ninja, and there was even like an island game, like you raised like an army on this island. I can't remember what it was called. But basically back then, games on the Apple platform really just came in the form of being downloaded on the App Store. And that was basically it. That was the only way to really get these games on Apple platforms. So that's why I was a bit confused when I saw this story pop up today about the Apple Arcade. So I was wondering, what exactly the Apple Arcade actually is. Come to find out, it is basically a game subscription service that was launched by Apple in 2019 for basically mobile games, which is actually kind of cool. I didn't realize that mobile games had, game subscription services, but it turns out Google also does this as well. And Netflix is actually kind of starting to do it also. But yeah, Apple launched this in 2019. It looks like it took off pretty well. And at the time, Apple, it looks like they were paying these game developers a pretty good chunk of money to basically just exclusively develop mobile games for the Apple Arcade. So all was well, and then of course 2020 came and went. And like all gaming services, Apple Arcade, it looks like they did very well during COVID. But in 2021, it looks like that's kind of when things kind of got a little dicey. They ended contracts with a lot of different game developers, and they sort of had this lack of communication with these devs as far as, why a lot of these projects were all of a sudden canceled. Well, fast forward now to 2024. So today there was this big story that came out where sources within the game development industry within the Apple Arcade are expressing a very negative outlook on what they think of the future of the Apple Arcade. Now keep in mind, these are just some developers. Of course, they don't speak for all developers. But according to this story, a lot of these developers are describing their outlook on the future as saying that they feel that the Apple Arcade has the, quote, smell of death. Yeah, I'm not making that up. Essentially, they're saying that, the future does not look promising for the Apple Arcade. So according to these developers, when the Apple Arcade started in September of 2019, they did great, paying all of these devs a good chunk of money, like I said. But as time went on in their now 5-year lifespan, I guess the Apple Arcade has kind of been, I don't know, flaky or just overall declining in their payments toward these developers. And there have been just a lot of issues reported by these devs that have fueled this sort of dark outlook toward the future, right? So they're saying that their communication continues to be very bad with their devs. And they're also saying that there is just this overall lack of transparency when it comes to their payouts, what they call like the bonus pool. So basically the guidelines for these games and the developers basically getting paid more for their game doing well. I guess these guidelines are just very vague right now, resulting in a lot of confusion from these devs on how exactly these payouts and these payments are determined. So, I mean, yeah, very interesting stuff. Looking on Wikipedia, it looks like there are a ton of games and game developers on the Apple Arcade. So if this is true, and if this is the general outlook of all of these devs, well, this would be affecting a lot of people and a lot of different companies. Now, one good thing that this story pointed out is that some devs remain optimistic due to the fact that nowadays there kind of seems to be more competition in the field of game subscription services for mobile games, right? So I have talked about, Netflix kind of picking up on this whole idea of mobile games. And these devs kind of talked about Netflix and how, this might kind of create some competition and therefore lead Apple to kind of focus more energy and, more importantly, more money on their games and their game developers. We will have to wait and see. But yeah, Apple Arcade, like I said, totally a new thing to me. But in its 5-year lifespan, it looks like it has done very well revenue-wise. But that may be declining from what it sounds like from these devs. It looks like Apple spent reportedly $500 million just to start out the Apple Arcade. That is a lot of money, but unfortunately, it's uncertain now just how confident Apple is in their Apple Arcade.